Thank you, Andy. So I have worked in emergency and specialty medicine for the better part of 20 years. Safe to say that I am fairly skilled in a wide variety of emergency procedures in dogs and cats. But the first time that I intervened in an emergency with one of my coworkers, I had no idea what I was doing. It's 2014. I was buying in to be an owner at a specialty and emergency hospital. I was just tapped to be the medical director, and I knew one of our employees was struggling. She had a lot going on in her personal life, and it was bleeding into work. She's a good doctor, a brilliant surgeon, but I knew at this point she was really in trouble. And one Thursday afternoon, she called me into the OR because things weren't going well. And you know when you call the neurologist into your thoracotomy, like things have gone sideways. And, very shortly thereafter, things went from bad to worse, and tensions were running high. And she looked across the table at me and said, "If this dog dies, I'm quitting my job, I'm going home, and I'm going to kill myself." And right then, in that moment, I knew she was serious. And let's get real, nothing was going to save that dog. So I knew it was up to me to save my friend. So I have to tell you that these moments are scary. They're super scary. But you guys have emotionally difficult conversations every single day in your practices. You already have the skills you need to deal with this crisis. But I'm going to give you a leg up on what I had and teach you a few things. Call it emotional CPR. The steps are simple. 1, take a history. 2, triage. 3, refer. So let's start with a history, right? You guys take histories every day, and just like in your exam room, you're going to use a combination of open-ended questions and some targeted ones to get the information you need. So if somebody says something scary, something like, "I want to die, I can't do this anymore, I can't live like this anymore," we need to check in. Guys, 1 in 4 veterinarians consider suicide at some point in their lives. 1 in 4. We don't actually have the numbers on our support staff, but I have seen informal polls that go as high as 50%. And you guys in your practice every day deal with someone who has just lost a family member. So in our lives, in our work environments, with our friends, this is not a subject we get to ignore. So when someone says something scary, we need to check in. We need to ask them if they actually intend self-harm. And it's awkward, and it's scary, but we need to make it easy for them to say yes to. So instead of saying something like, "You weren't thinking of killing yourself, are you?" Try something like, "Hey, are you considering killing yourself today?" And I know it's awkward, but it gets easy with practice, so we're gonna practice. I wanna say before we practice that I know that this brings up emotional stuff for people, and there are 2 people in the room who are trained. Gary is over there. Gary, wave your hand. And Jamie is over there. Wave your hand. Great. So everyone, could you just please turn to your neighbor and ask them if they feel like killing themselves today? Okay, I only have 9 minutes, so thank you for participating. I super appreciate it. And that's awkward, right? But I promise that the first time you do that is the hardest. And you've already gotten through that, right? So it's all gravy from here. So after we have an idea that a person is in trouble, most of the time they say no. But what if they say yes, or maybe I'm unsure? Well, after we have that idea that the person is in trouble, we need to take a history. And here's where you use those open-ended questions, those empathic and reflexive listening skills you work on every day in your clinics to figure out what's up. Guys, suicidality is a slow climb. It's a building of circumstances, but often there is a trigger, a straw that breaks the camel's back. I think of a NAMV member that I helped recently. He's been struggling for a while, years really, but it was an unexpected tax bill that brought him to the brink of suicide. And that $2,000 bill was not worth his life. But in that moment, with all his brain was dealing with, he couldn't navigate around it. He needed his friends to help him. And without knowing what was up, we couldn't help him navigate. So taking a history is super important. So after we take that history, it's important to triage. And so here's where we're going to use some targeted questions to figure out how much trouble this person is in. So we're going to do things like ask about negative prognostic indicators, things that predispose you to suicide. So ask them if they have a history of mental illness or suicide attempts in themselves, their family, or their close friends. Ask them if they have a plan. If they have a plan, is it a today plan or is it a sometime plan? If they have a plan, do they have access to the means to execute that plan? In one study, 87% of veterinarians who died by suicide died by self-poisoning, i.e. euthanasia solution. So when we are talking about people who are in this place, we need to be careful with their access to those drugs. Ask them if they're drunk, if they're high, because let's all admit we don't make better decisions when we're drunk. And if you're doing this over the phone or the computer like I am, you want to ask if they're alone. Having someone physically with you is a huge barrier to suicide. And we also want to talk about the positive prognostic indicators, the things that make life worth living. Ask them about their hobbies, their passions, their hopes, their dreams, their goals, the things that make life fun. Are they doing those things anymore? If so, why not? Ask them about their friends, the family, the people that care about them. Ask them about the pets and people who depend on them. That one is especially impactful in tying someone to this world. And really in our communities, guys, who doesn't have a pet, right? Ask them if they have a mental health professional who can help them through this moment. And that's triage. So after we triage, we have a good idea of how much trouble this person is, and now it's time to refer. And I know in your practice, at this point, actually, you would usually be making a diagnostic and treatment plan, right? We're veterinarians, we're fixers, we give out medical advice. This is what we want to do, but please resist. I'll put it to you this way. If the overwhelming excitement of Uncharted was too much for me right now and I keeled over right here, right now, I hope some of you would come check on me, right? Maybe make sure I still had a heartbeat, and if I didn't, do some CPR until the ambulance came. Please do if that happens. But you wouldn't expect yourself to grab a butter knife and do a triple bypass right here, right? That would be ridiculous. Same thing here, guys. You've recognized the emergency, you assess it, and you keep that person safe until they get to the help that they need. That is your only responsibility. And let's talk about getting them to the help they need. So in my mind, there are 3 levels of urgency here. So 1, people who are actively suicidal. These are people who have a plan, they have means, and they're planning to execute this plan today. This is life-threatening. If they have a therapist, call their therapist immediately. See if they can be seen immediately. That's the most impactful thing you can do. If their therapist isn't available or they don't have a therapist, take them to the emergency room. Now, guys, let's just admit the emergency room is not a perfect place for a mental health crisis, just like it's not the perfect place to deal with any chronic issue. However, it is the place you go if you think you're going to die today, and that's what we're talking about. And finally, if someone has an active plan and they're refusing to seek care, you can call the cops. Let's get real. People get real ticked at you when you call the cops on them. It breaks trust, but we have a phrase on the NAMV admin squad, better mad than dead. So if you have to call the cops, call the cops. The next level is people who are struggling. They're not actively suicidal. They may be what we call passively suicidal. They've thought about it, they're in a really bad place, but they're not in an active plan. Look, my experience with these people is that they have a failure of problem solving. They have trouble doing little things and they need a lot of help. So help them do stuff. Google a therapist for them. Make an appointment for them. Drive them there. They need this amount of help. Their brain's not working as it should. They need hand-holding and they need love. And then finally, we have people who are not in a good place, but not in a lot of trouble. And these are the people that we can give some advice to. Eddie, the therapist who taught me crisis counseling, said to me, we never, ever, ever, ever give advice, except sometimes. And these people are those sometimes, right? Like these are the people, things like self-care and drawing boundaries, those are appropriate conversations to have with them. Totally okay to check in there. And speaking of checking in, once you refer, it's important for you to check in later. Say something like, hey, I'm gonna call you on Thursday and make sure you made it to that therapy appointment. It's so important that you do it. Put an alert on your calendar, write it on your fridge. You can't forget. It's also important to remind them that it's okay for them to reach out to you. People in this space feel lonely and they feel like they're a burden. You need to tell them that they're not. And guys, I know this is scary stuff. I know, it does get easier with time, but let me assure you, you have hard emotional conversations every day in your job. And this one's really no different. The only difference is you might save a person's life instead of a dog's. And I'm gonna leave you with a parting thought. When we would get nervous in training, Eddie would look at us and he could tell, and we'd be like, Eddie, what if I do something wrong? What if I say the wrong thing? And he would smile that calm smile and say, whatever you do with good intention and focus is perfect. So go into these conversations with good intention and focus, and you will be perfect. Thanks, guys.